Okay, so we're going to talk about management a year at a glance. When you're first learning to keep bees, you're going to be in your bees more frequently than you will the next year. So, like I said, every 21 days, you're going to just want to get in there and take a peek. So you're going to get your package and you're going to install your bees. And there are several different methods. You can do a method where you shake the bees in. So the bees are all clustered on top of here, and you've taken the queen out, and she'll have a little cork in here, or she'll have this bee candy, and you just put it in your pocket so she stays nice and warm. And then you hit this box really hard, and you jar all the bees down onto the bottom. Here's my deconstruction. Okay. So you're going to have your feeder in position already. And you're just going to take several frames out of the middle. And then a lot of beekeepers do it. This is just called the shake method or the dump method. And this method originated with commercial beekeepers because it's just fast and then they don't have to come back. And they would usually free release their queen. So you just shake all of the bees, and you have to, bees are like Velcro, so when you're shaking, you're being kind of rough, and you're shaking them down into that box. Okay? And you want to just put the queen on a frame. Actually, you probably want to do this first. And you want to make sure that her little screen is not faced in. And if you don't have any comb, usually you can just squish this little box down into the wax and she'll stick there. But if you don't have anything to attach her to, you can use a rubber band. So she just stays right there. Okay, so she's in first. And then you shake all of the bees in. You let everything calm down. And bees are kind of flying everywhere, and they have not emptied their digestive system for a couple of weeks. So there's bee poop all over, and bees are kind of flying everywhere. It's a little bit hectic. You give everything a few minutes to calm down, and then you put the frames back in. Another way that you can do it, you put your queen in here, and then you put the box right in here, and the bees will just walk out. Actually, what you want to do is you want to put the bees a little bit far away from the queen so that they'll walk out. And the next day, you'd never want to leave this box in longer than 24 hours. The next day, all of the bees, this box should be empty, and you can just take it out. If there are a few bees, you can just shake them in. And no bees fly. It's not crazy. It's not a crazy mess. So that's a great way to do it. And that's the way that I like to do it. It's just less insane. And then after that, once you get your bees installed, you want to feed them. You want to make sure that their sugar syrup doesn't dry out, because they're going to be using this for comb building. If there's nectar, then they can build comb. If there's not nectar, if there's not flowers, bees don't have a food resource to make wax comb. So you can either use the Honeybee Thrive. They have that prepared here, and you would do the spring mixture directions. It's 1 gallon to 3 gallons, so 1 to 3. You dilute it down a little bit so it's kind of simulates the nectar from flowers. You keep giving that until they stop taking it, or until you get a honey super on. They usually stop taking sugar syrup by the end of May. And they have lots of comb, and by then you should have a major nectar source.
How long has it taken to go through?
It depends. A really healthy colony is going to use this up every 5 to 7 days. You want to check and just make sure. And this little thing has, you can just put a hose down and fill it up. This just comes out, so you can just put it in open. I like to use door screen. I don't love these because bees drowned in here. Some people love them and they use them all the time. I don't love them, so I just use door screen that's been accordioned, folded, and I just take my hive tool and stick it down in there, and it gives the bees a place to walk. These have a little bit of a rough surface, so the bees should be able to come up, but it's nice to give them a little bit of a platform to stand on. So you just keep filling that up, and you also want to give them a little bit of pollen patty. So the sugar syrup is their carbohydrate, and the pollen patty is their protein. And so they need both of those things to rear their young. And so you don't need this whole thing. You would just scoop some out and put it on a piece of wax paper and just kind of pat it down like dough so that it fits underneath the lid. And you just put that you just set it right on top of here, and then you just put the lid on. So you want to feed your bees, never let them go hungry. And you want to get them to the first major nectar flow in Utah. That's the dandelion bloom. I'm not sure what it is here. And that's the end of, well, that's mid-May. So what are you going to look for in a hive? What do you want to see when you open the lid? What's the most important thing? What was that? Yes, you want to see bees. You want to see that that there's more bees than there were when you installed them, and then when you lift again, you want to see twice as many bees every time. So you can literally just look inside the lid, unless if there's stagnation in the adult bee population, then you're going to have to do more of an extensive inspection. So the larvae need to be a nice pearly white color, the little grubby wormy things. You don't want them to be yellow or brown or any off color. Everything should smell like honey. If it doesn't smell like honey, if it has a weird smell, then there could be a problem. You want to make sure that you're seeing that nice tight brood pattern that we talked about, where there are very few holes for the queen to lay in, and she's on another frame laying eggs in all the holes. If you see eggs, then the queen was there. You don't have to find her every time. Splits and swarm control, you won't have to worry about that too much this year. If you decide to buy a nuke, which is a great way to go, you will just want to make sure that that nuke is like a little mini colony, and so you want to give space to the nuke like you would your regular beehive. So they can get congested in there very quickly. So you just want to make sure that you get those frames out and in a box so that they don't start to draw swarm cells. Okay? And for summer management, so you're trying to manage everything to a really big population in June. So you can over super, you can get your honey supers on a little bit early. It's better to over super in June than it is to not have enough supers on, because you want to catch that nectar flow. That's kind of the idea, is to get your bee population nice and big so that you can maximize your honey. And the honey harvest, how much to take? Well, anything above the queen excluder is what you can take. And for the winter, you want to keep them warm and dry. So, pardon me? Well, bees won't fly at 40 degrees. They just stay in. You don't have to do anything special as long as you have a windbreak and they're dry.
In Utah, it gets colder than 40 degrees.
Yeah, it does. And there are several methodologies. You really don't have to do anything special. You need to have some ventilation so that there's airflow, because if there's not airflow, the bees will cluster at 92 degrees. And it creates condensation on the top of the hive, and then the water drips down and it gets the bees wet. And wet bees in the winter, your colony won't survive.
So with like the 10-degree weather that we have had here last month, they will still survive?
Yeah, they just cluster tighter. Yep, as long as they have food and they're dry. Yep, you'll be good. No. Nope, no installation.
Stick them in a shed where they're out of the weather.
It's really, sheds are difficult. Some people use sheds where they just have them in the shade so that they stay at about 36 degrees because they'll fly out. So bee sheds, I know up here in Idaho, there are some places that rent their potato sheds for beekeeping, for wintering bees. They really do fine. They'll just stay in a cluster. So these are the brand of bees that you're going to get. They're Wooten's Golden Queens, and those are the packages. And again, they're going to come in 3-pound packages, and they're hygienic Italians and Carniolans. And the hygienic just means that they're disease sensitive, and the bees can sense whether or not there's a problem underneath the cap. These particular kind of bees have been selected for this genetic trait, and they'll uncap the bee and take the sick larva or pupa out. In theory, it works better than not having a varroa sensitive gene.